Allow me to tell you a beautiful story about a time when I almost died, which is always a great start to a story, on Mount Cleveland, which is the tallest mountain in Glacier National Park. Now, it's not tall compared to a lot of mountains because it's only around 10 or 11,000 feet. Ha! No big deal. But one thing that we didn't know about this mountain was that there were no trails to the top. And so we, being the, wonderful little outdoorsmen that we were, we got out a topographic map and we traced along some routes and we're like, oh, hey, these are nice and gradual. This is great. I don't think the map makers quite knew what they were doing because we ended up scaling some cliffs that were at times about 50 feet in like from top to bottom. Moss covered, extremely slippery. We had backpacks and no ropes. Now, the we that we're talking about is myself and a good friend of mine, Reed. And we did end up getting to the top, but it took us a lot longer than expected. At some points, we were on these precipices that were precipice. Is that the right word? I know we were way the heck up there. Think Lord of the Rings and those giant swooping, flybys, and you see the dwarves walking along these small little narrow passes. At times, we were perched on areas that you could look down, and these cliffs were designed for base jumpers, not for climbers. Like think of standing on the edge of the Columbia Tower and looking straight down. You may be thinking, Bo, you're getting a little dramatic here. No. This is mind-boggling how sheer these cliffs were. They just disappeared into these valleys down below. So a lot of moments where you had really sweaty palms and you're just like, all right, I really hope that this rock face does not give out as I skirt along this thing. And oh, wow, I'm getting sweaty hands just thinking about it again. Well, we did get to the top of Mount Cleveland. It wasn't very rewarding because it wasn't very pretty up there and it was kind of dark. But I remember looking across the valley and seeing this small little grizzly bear, and he was just kind of waddling along. If you've ever seen a bear, they're extremely adorable creatures. You want to hug them, but of course it'd be like burying your face in a meat grinder. You don't want to do that. Thank goodness it was a long ways away. He looked nice and small. Although in retrospect, if he was up close, he probably would have been more the size of a VW bug. Terrifying creatures if you're up close. But I digress. Oh, by the way, if you're wondering why a bear was up above timberline, did you know that in the evening time, grizzly bears go up to a certain area where it's cool and there's lots of rocks and shale, and moths come out and they kind of lick them up like candy. Isn't that adorable? So he was up there just having a dessert. Yeah, thankfully we were not the dessert. We did not end up getting to our campsite. Yeah, very frustrating, but it was getting cold and dark and extremely dangerous to continue on down a mountain where there really was no trail at all. And if you took one small step, then over you plummeted. So we were like, okay, this is going to be really bad if we have to bivouac, which is French for being a wuss and camping overnight in the event of an emergency. To bivouac. All right, so we dug out a small area of the shale. No trees around. I mean, there were some dead trees, and we were like, hey, there's some dead branches here. We can build a small little fire to make ourselves feel better. Which is interesting. Fire has an interesting psychological effect, not just practical for warmth or for cooking or to signal people, but psychological. You'll notice that in a lot of survival manuals. They say, build a fire once you have shelter and food and water all set up, because it really does encourage you. And it was very nice. We were kind of bundled up there, myself and Reed, and we were staying warm and dry. and we bivouacked there on the side of Mount Cleveland, and we survived. And it was a good thing that we stopped, because if we had continued the next morning, you looked around and you were just like, we were walking along this. If I took one step that way, I would have plummeted 100 feet down into this cavern down there. Oh, really, really bad news. Well, what made this adventure even worse, oh, it was so frustrating. On our way back, we were out in the middle of nowhere. Once again, not a lot of people climb Mount Cleveland, but we finally did get to a trail, and we came across some people just dressed normally with backpacks on and stuff. And being the friendly people that we were, we stopped and asked them how they were, and they were asking us. And this lady was like, you're really out in the middle of nowhere. Where are you coming from? And like, well, originally we had a campsite reservation for this area, but we ran into a really sticky situation and we had to bivouac on Mount Cleveland. And by the way, we were very, very careful putting everything back to normal, leaving nothing but footprints. And this lady, I should have noticed the walkie-talkie on the side of her backpack, because a few feet down the trail, she evidently stopped and called us in. Yep, she was one of those volunteers who called us in, and the rangers met us a few ways down the trail and intercepted us and said, hey, we got word that you guys were the ones who bivouacked in an emergency situation on Mount Cleveland. And we were like, yes, yes. Oh man, I was very unfortunate, extremely uncomfortable, but we survived. And they were like, here's a ticket. We're like, really now? But yeah, they just wanted to, rub our face in the dog poo. Which is why my lovely uncle calls them the Green Nazis, because in order to be a ranger, by the way, there are a few really, really great rangers who I've had wonderful conversations with, but every once in a while, you stumble across that ranger who is just like, you are a criminal for being out here. How dare you try to experience the outdoors? Even though I've grown up in the outdoors and I have a I have so much compassion for nature and for trees. I love it. It's so beautiful. And you can get close to nature. You can get close to God because there are no distractions out there. And it's just very, very peaceful. And I want to preserve that. But when you're always being accused, it's so frustrating. Over and over and over again. I have so many stories of rangers. But anyway, I don't want to, whine about them. But they gave us a ticket. And, in retrospect, it really does take a special person in order to wear an extremely itchy, uncomfortable green outfit and go out there, into the middle of nowhere, barely see anybody for hours upon time. And so, obviously, rangers, it takes a special person. And some of them probably hate people. I mean, that's why they're a ranger. They want to get out away from people. So when they meet them, they're just like, here's another person I hate. Let's find a reason to give him a ticket. So frustrating. But anyway, we were in the wrong, of course, because we didn't camp in our designated campsite. But hey, at least we survived. And that was the story, the awesome, awesome story of Mount Cleveland. Awesome.